Welcome back to DannieBSpeaks, the podcast. I am your host, Tahir Ali, and yes, it has definitely been a while, too long if you ask me. And so let's just get right into everything. In the past year and a half, give or take a few months, I stopped doing the podcast, or I should say about a year and a half ago, something like that. There was a lot going on, too many things. And during this time, regardless of what I was dealing with, I learned so many valuable lessons. One was that I missed doing this, the podcast. I missed writing. But most importantly, I learned that you had to take care of yourself first. There were days that I thought that I was seriously on my way out of here. No lie, no bullshit, no exaggeration. But I kept on pushing. I told my closest friends what was going on, and I thank you all for your help, prayers, and encouragement. I truly do. If you know me personally, you know that I am a very private person. My podcast and writing, those are outlets for me and how I feel comfortable expressing myself. Ever since I was a child, I have always expressed myself through writing. I have always loved to write. My biggest regret in life is not pursuing my writing and journalism career in the first place like I always wanted to. Who knows where I could have been at this point in my life, but more on that another time. So let's just go ahead and get into the show. So girl, where have you been? What is really going on? Well, there's been too much going on. And I've been here, right here, nowhere else really. I couldn't go anywhere else, truthfully. If you read my website, DannieBSpeaks.com, a little over a year ago, I wrote a post stating that I was stopping the podcast mainly because I wasn't into it anymore. Well, that was partially true. The truth was I wasn't feeling good at all. And I had no idea at that time that things were about to get real. So in late 2019, I turned 40. And of course, at 40 years old, women are supposed to start getting their annual mammograms. So with COVID and everything shutting down, I had to wait. Before that, I did plan on getting it done early in the year, which of course would have been early 2020, just to get that shit out the way. But of course, things came up and I couldn't make it. I couldn't get an appointment in because I had a lot going on with work and stuff like that. And when my schedule finally cleared, boom, COVID-19 shuts everything down. Finally in June, yes, June, I was able to get in for my first mammogram. Yay me. I hated it. I hated it. I still hate it. I've only had my second one ever, and I hate it. But anyway, that's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. So, of course, I knew it had to be done, but I still wasn't impressed at all, not one bit. And yet, with me not being impressed with the violation and uncomfortableness, I guess that's a word, whatever, it sounds right. It was the day that definitely changed my life. Now, I heard it was common after your first mammogram that you may need to come back for an ultrasound because it's your first one and they just want to make sure that everything's okay. I guess that is kind of common. It doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen. And if it's more serious, then you may need a biopsy. Well, a few days after my mammogram, I got a call, and of course they won't tell you what they think they see or anything like that. But basically they told me that I needed to get back in there and have a biopsy like tomorrow. So scheduled the appointment. I just had a feeling that it wasn't good. The way that they were like, okay, you got to get in here. We got to get this done. We got to see what's going on. Something doesn't look right. And of course, it wasn't the next day, which I wish it would have because all I was thinking about it. But a few days later, I got in for the appointment and had the biopsy done. I just had this feeling that something wasn't right. I wasn't feeling bad or anything like that, but I knew. I just knew. It was just like something in the back of my mind. So I had the biopsy done, and the very next day, they called me back and they told me that I needed to come in. So I was just like, okay, because, well, after my biopsy, they said that if everything looks good, we'll call you and let you know. And if there is something we see that we may need to get you back in here. So that's all I thought about was like, okay, if everything would have been all good, then they would have just told me that everything was, good. It was just tissue or something like that. That would have been that. It would have been done with. But they told me that I needed to come in. So I was able to get in the next day. Coincidentally, I had that day off. So I was like, well, can I just come in tomorrow? They were like, yeah, the sooner the better. So I went back in to where I had the biopsy done, and they basically said that we saw something that wasn't good. We want to give you an additional biopsy right now where we can basically get the results back immediately. They did the biopsy, and I waited in the room for maybe about 15, 20 minutes. It was the longest 15, 20 minutes of my life. And they came back in and basically said that there is a very small tumor there, and it looks like the beginning of early stages of breast cancer. And I was just like, excuse me, like who, what, where, what? They were like, it's a good thing that you came in now because, tumors can grow real fast. Yes, they can grow over time, but some of them can grow real fast, and you don't want to take any chances, of course, So it was a good thing that I did get it done when I did. And then they also said that it's possible if I would have got the biopsy done, say, late 2019 when I turned 40 or any time before then, it may have went undetected because that's how small the tumor was. Well, basically to avoid chemotherapy and to avoid the tumor getting bigger, then, we may need to we could probably shrink it. And if that doesn't work, then we will have to go in and surgically remove the tumor. It's a outpatient surgery. And so I was just like, well, shit, whatever needs to be done, I don't want to do, or I should say, I don't want to prolong anything. I don't want to drag this out. As soon as we can get this taken care of, the better. So let's just do what we have to do. I'll just take some time off of work, whatever needs to be done. Let's just get this done. So fortunately, within a few weeks, I went back for a couple of procedures to shrink the tumor. And then I went in for another ultrasound or another mammogram. I don't know why I keep wanting to call it an ultrasound, but pretty much the same thing. So luckily for me, everything worked out. And of course, I have to constantly, for the rest of my life, keep a close eye on that. Of course, tumors can come back. To have caught it so early, to have minimal procedures done to get rid of the tumor without having to have surgery or do chemotherapy, anything like that, was a godsend. So I am very fortunate for that. That was just one thing that happened. That was one thing. Then, now, I had my first bariatric surgery in 2017. From that, I developed acid reflux, which is a very common side effect from having bariatric surgery. Well, at least, when you're having something like the sleeve done, which is pretty much what I had. The acid reflux just got worse over time. They were saying that it would get better, and it did not. Mine just got extremely worse. And it seemed like as soon as I got over the booby thing, my voice, and you can still hear, is kind of hoarse right now, and I'm fine. It's just still healing. Sometimes my voice is strong, so you may hear a podcast or a video or something that I do, and my voice sounds quote unquote normal. And then other times you may hear it and it may sound like this. And then other times you may hear it and it may sound worse. But I just have to just push through. But the other reason I stopped the podcast is because my voice was becoming extremely hoarse. I mean, to the point where sometimes it would hurt to talk. I'm sitting here thinking like, oh boy, like what is going on now? Because I didn't feel right. I was always just tired and nauseous, especially like when you have a hoarse voice and your throat hurts a lot. That's not a good combination, especially if you're a podcaster. You know what I mean? And at the time, of course, I didn't know what was going on, but it would soon come to light, just like my other situation did. Now, whatever was going on, I knew it wasn't right. Not only was my voice and throat jacked up, but as I mentioned a little while ago, I was feeling nauseous and tired all of the time. I mean, it was so bad that I would get sick and have to go get in bed for the rest of the day. And this is like while I was working, and I wouldn't even wait for my supervisor to come back and be like, like if I would request the rest of the day off. Sometimes I couldn't even wait until, she responded back and approved it. I just didn't care at that time because I felt horrible. So not only was I losing time at work, but it was also getting worse by the day. And it was getting old. And just like before, I knew in my heart that something wasn't right. At the time I was 41, and definitely at 41 years old, you should, if you don't, but you should know your body. And this was just something that just did not feel right at all. I knew it had to do with the acid reflux because I couldn't drink water. Didn't taste right. It was the craziest thing. I mean, water. I couldn't have any hot and spicy food, and I love hot and spicy food, but I couldn't have it. Pretty much anything that I ate would just sit right there on my chest, would take forever to digest. And it got to the point where I didn't want to eat. I didn't even really want to drink because not everything, but majority of the stuff that I would eat or drink would just make me not feel good, or I would throw it up. That was the other thing. And that wasn't good on my throat either because I was constantly getting sick. I was throwing up nothing but pretty much acid and what I ate or drank that did not agree with me, which pretty much was everything. I didn't know what to eat. I didn't know what to drink. I got to a point where I was scared to eat meat. And I wrote a post about this too on my website, DannieBSpeaks.com. that I was a vegetarian, kind of, I wasn't really taking on a vegetarian lifestyle, but I was just saying I can't eat meat. That's like one of the worst things for me. Even chicken and fish, the lightest of the light, couldn't even really do that. It was bad. It was really bad. So I had my physical with my primary care doctor in January of this year. I was telling him what was going on. I mean, he knew about my acid reflux issues and everything, but I was letting him know that over the past few months, it has seriously gotten worse. It's to the point where I can't even function. It just doesn't seem right that something like this should be taking me down like that. I didn't know what to do. So he's scheduled for me to have a endoscopy done. I think that's how endoscopy, however the hell you pronounce it, whatever. EDG, I had that done. A few days after the procedure that I had done, the EDG, just, where they put the scope down and all that fun stuff. I had the procedure done, and a few days later said they wanted me to get some blood work done just to make sure that, because pretty much they saw something. But they wanted me to get some blood work done. And from the blood work, then they will be able to diagnose exactly what it is. So I went and got the blood work done. Then I had to wait. Because I got the blood drawn at LabCorp because it was a Friday when they called me and I didn't want to wait. So I went that Saturday morning to LabCorp and got the blood drawn. And of course, LabCorp didn't send the results to myself. They were on the website, but I didn't know. I didn't know that they did that. They didn't even tell me that they did that. But they were supposed to also send them and fax them, not only mail, but also fax to the surgeon who did the endoscopy. It's supposed to send it to him. I thought that, they were just still doing their thing or whatever. But they contacted me and they were like, did you hear anything back from your blood work? Well, first of all, they asked me, did I get it done? And I said, yeah. I said, I got it done. This was probably about maybe almost 2 weeks later. They were like, well, we haven't heard anything yet. So they were like, well, why don't you go on their website, and they should have put your results there. So went on the website and boom, put my information in. It was right there. So I faxed the information to them immediately, like printed it out, faxed it to them. I want to say that was like a Thursday or a Friday. And then that Tuesday, I believe it was a Tuesday, they called me back and they said, well, it's not as severe as we thought, but it still is going to most likely require surgery. And I'm like, okay, what is going to require surgery? So they told me that I had Barrett's disease, and they kind of explained it to me, but they said they wanted me to do more research because, they could tell me what it is, but they really wanted me to see how severe it is myself. I mean, they gave me a good explanation of what it is and what the side effects are, and I matched every single one to a T. So basically, Barrett's disease is pretty much like or it's also called Barrett's esophagus. So pretty much my esophagus was completely damaged. It's caused by years of having GERD or acid reflux. If it continues, then it can develop into esophageal cancer. I mean, not even a year ago, just months ago, I just escaped having a very serious diagnosis of breast cancer. And then now, if I don't have surgery pretty much to repair my esophagus, then I can easily now get esophageal cancer. And this would probably be worse because of how bad everything has developed already. I was just like, what next? You know what I mean? So luckily, let me see, this happened it was the end of February when I got the EDG done. They hooked me up with a surgeon like a few weeks after the whole procedure was done, because remember, I had to wait for LabCorp and all that stuff and everything. So that was like another 2 weeks. And then finally, like about a week later, hooked up with the surgeon, went in, had all my pre-surgical stuff done within like a month or so. And they said it was, like it was an emergency surgery pretty much because this was preventing cancer. So early May, I was able to get in and have my surgery. Now, the crazy thing about this surgery from my last one, which this one wasn't they did have to, of course, repair my esophagus. They also had to fix some things on my stomach because of where the intestines from the esophagus, all that was pretty much damaged, but the esophagus was the worst. So this surgery was a little bit more intense than the last one. But the crazy thing was I went home the next day, probably I think it was less than 24 hours after I got out of surgery, or at least after I woke up from surgery, I was home. All they said basically, and I know this was during COVID and everything, and they were trying to get people in and out if they could. And of course they made sure that I was okay and everything like that, but I didn't have as many incisions as I had with the last surgery. So they weren't really worried about that. I knew what to do, how to take care of them. I really wasn't able to eat. Now, I was like, of course, they said if I could drink, it was like how much, like maybe 40 ounces of water. So I had to drink that, and I was chugging. They said if I can get that down without getting sick, then I can go home. I was like, okay, let's do this, So I was drinking the water, and that was the first thing that really immediately let me know that something was different, because I was actually able to drink this water without it having like a nasty taste to it or anything like that. Like, it was just like I didn't taste acid or anything. I just tasted water, nice ice cold water. And it was amazing. It was everything to me. Something so simple, but it was everything. And the only thing I was able to really eat was, I couldn't have anything hot at the time. So I had like Jell-O and a protein shake. I was able to keep those down around maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I called my mom and stepdad and was like, look, come up here because I'm trying to go home. All I got to do is finish this water and keep it down. So, I mean, they were coming up anyway, but, I was just like, be prepared to take me home because I'm ready to go. I wanted to get I just wanted to be in my own bed. And the thing was, like, I mean, of course, I know I just had major surgery and I had to be careful and everything like that. But I just felt so much better. My first surgery, I was so nauseous and I didn't feel like myself again or even close for like maybe 2.5 months after surgery. Like I was back at work and I was still feeling like crap from my, when I had my first surgery. And then one day it just snapped and I felt okay. This one, I was mainly just exhausted from the surgery. I couldn't talk. After surgery, I couldn't talk. Like they told me like for almost 2 weeks, you can't really, like you can attempt to speak, but it's not going to work out. So because, I just had surgery on my esophagus, my throat basically. So, well, not basically, it's what it is. So people were calling me to check on me and everything like that. And I was just like, I'm sorry, I can't talk. We texted and everything. Wonderful thing with smartphones and technology and all that stuff. So I was able to keep people up to what was going on with me and how everything went. But it was just like completely night and day from the first surgery to the second surgery. Everything was taken care of with that. I mean, it was just a lot. I mean, a cancer diagnosis and a cancer scare within 6 months, if that, 6-7 months, something around that. I mean, that was crazy. That was just too much. It was a lot mentally. So that was why that's why there were no blog posts, because I mean, I could write, but I wasn't in the mood. You know what I mean? Like I couldn't just focus on that. And as I mentioned before, like I was always tired and I couldn't think, it was just like, I just wanted like, I would work, get the work day over with, and then I would just either want to go lay down or just go sit in the corner of my couch and I don't even really watch TV, but I would just like be on my iPad or just have the TV on for background noise or something like that and just be like in a totally different world. I mean, it was a lot. I'm thankful that for now, everything, and hopefully forever, I should say, for now and forever, hopefully everything will be okay. I still get nervous sometimes about my voice and my throat because it does get dry, and like right now I'm drinking water, but I'm still like, it still feels weird. And I mean, I just had surgery in May. It hasn't even been a year yet. It's December just started. So it's a lot to deal with. It is a lot to deal with, another major surgery. I mean, it was a lot. It was definitely a lot. And yes, I did take my entire leave of absence off. I thought that I would be able to go back to work before my 6 weeks for leave was up, but there was no way because I was really tired. It takes a while, especially the older you get, for the anesthesia to wear off. Not only that, I had a bad side effect from the anesthesia. It wasn't as bad as last time. That was totally different. But this time it messed with my memory. And I didn't know that was a common side effect as well from anesthesia, especially the older you get. I would be thinking of something and I would forget it. Like, I mean, it was so weird. And it was just like, it was to the point where it was making me just feel so uncomfortable. I was like, Alzheimer's runs in my family. And I was just like, oh my goodness. Like, just being paranoid like that. Thank goodness it wasn't that. Now when I forget stuff, I know it's just old age, pretty much. That's hopefully we'll stick with that. Like, even as good as I was feeling after surgery, I still, of course, didn't have a lot of strength. And like, if I had to run to the store or something real quick, I wouldn't even be in the store for a long time. Like, I wasn't doing any major grocery shopping or anything like that. If I just went in there just to pick up like some more liquids or, just if I needed toiletries or something like that, if I was just running in and out of the store, I would have to come home and lay down. So that's when I knew. I was like, okay, girl, you're doing way too much. But that was what happened. That's why the podcast was on this super long, ridiculous hiatus, but it was necessary. It was needed for a lot of reasons. And here we are. We're back. So what is next for DannieBSpeaks.com and just DannieBSpeaks period? A lot. I have a lot coming up. I have a lot going on. But first and foremost is to take care of myself. If I have not learned anything else, it is to take care of myself. When something doesn't feel right, in your heart of hearts that something isn't right, please get it checked out. So even though I would have preferred not to have gone through all of that, it really was eye-opening when things like that happen and you come out a better person. I feel like it's a blessing in disguise. It's a bad blessing, I guess. I don't know what you want to call it. It was definitely eye-opening in so many ways. So both of my solo podcasts, DannieBSpeaks the podcast, as well as Not Another True Crime podcast, those two will continue. I'm going to get back on a schedule like I was before, where I was at least posting them weekly, if not both weekly. Then you may get one week and then the other podcast the next week. I do have some other projects that I'm working on, other podcasts with collaborators. And of course, if you want to know what's going on next, you can always go over to my wonderful website, DannieBSpeaks.com, where I did do a post called Who is Tahir Ali? And it will explain why I'm using that name now and what is next and what I want to do with the brand and the other projects that I have going on. There is a merch line coming, and that's another reason why I promised this podcast last week. I just had so many ideas coming. Like I was doing designs, I was working on getting my name registered and all these other things. And then I just started getting ideas for different podcasts that I wanted to do, especially the true crime ones. And I have a list of like 10. I just started just doing research for like pretty much all of them, getting like a gist of the story and how I wanted to tell it. So last week truly was a busy week for me when it came to working on things for DannieBSpeaks. And that's why the podcast is a week late, but better late than never. It's here. We're going to get back on a schedule. And when I get to that schedule, I will announce the schedule. So in closing, what I do want to say is once again, and I will say it until I'm blue in the face, until I literally have no breath left in my body. If something doesn't feel right, please go check it out. Even if someone else that knows you, that sees you every day, if they see something that might not be right, then that's really when you need to go and be like, okay, I need to go check this out. It's nothing to play around with. And I just wish you all the best, continued health and success. And let's just keep on going. Me, my peers and I should say, we're in our 40s now. I just remember being in my late teens, early 20s and just thinking 40 was, compared to where we were at that time, just thinking 40 was so old because, at the time our parents were 40, 40 and above. So I look at it now, like now I'm the age that my mom was when I was going into my last year of college. Just to think about all that time that really just truly seemed like yesterday. I don't want to take anything for granted. So let's encourage each other. Let's look out for each other. And most importantly, look out for yourself. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to tune in to the comeback episode, I guess. I don't really want to call it that, but the return episode. How about that? The return episode of DannieBSpeaks, the podcast. Don't forget to check out my other podcast, DannieBSpeaks Presents, Not Another True Crime podcast, where, of course, I just talk about different cases of one of my favorite things to indulge in, which is true crime. You can listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Spotify, Amazon Podcast, as well as on my website, DannieBSpeaks.com. My favorite place to go listen to it, though, is on my YouTube page, which is DannieBSpeaks. Also, while you're there, go ahead and subscribe to that page. I will have some other things coming up on the YouTube page, hopefully pretty soon here. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, ideas for topics that you may want me to talk about, discuss, or whatever, please hit me up at DannieBSpeaks@gmail.com. If you would like to sponsor me, or if you would like for me to sponsor you, please hit me up at DannieBSpeaks@gmail.com. And that goes for sponsorships, promotions, anything in that realm business-wise. DannieBSpeaks@gmail.com. And not only can you listen to the podcast on my website, DannieBSpeaks.com, you can also go there and get just different viewpoints, keep up on my journey. I have some projects and series that I'm working on that will tie into the website, books, merch, and my YouTube page. It'll all end up making sense soon, hopefully. I got a lot that I'm working on and my mind is all over the place, so bear with me, but things are happening. And as always, thank you for taking the time to tune in to listen to your girl on Dannie B Speaks, the podcast. Take care of yourself and each other, and I will talk to you all next time. Peace.